G'day everyone. Today we're gonna have try and make a quick video for you. Today we're gonna talk about something I've had for a while. We're gonna talk about the Pro Mist Tiffin 1/4 filter. Yeah. So I've been using these for quite some time. I actually bought mine back in November last year, which might come as quite a surprise to some of you. So I've been using them on and off for the past almost a year now. Um, I first heard about these filters through the YouTuber Barney Arthur. I think Barney is fantastic. You should check his channel out. I'll drop the link below. Barney alerted me to these ProMist filters and way back late, bit about middle of last year. So I got some because I had some weddings coming up and I wanted to try that look and I thought it would work really well. So today's video is about it's basically a review of what I think of them first of all and how I've used them in my photography, both professionally and just casual shooting, and what I think of them. In fact, I'm using one right now. You might not notice, but ta-da! There's one on this lens here, all contrasty, and on my skin, and on my hairs, and on my horrible wrinkles, and then glossy, smooth, hazy. All right, so, so I use them quite a lot for a lot of my work that I do. So let's get into some footage right now, and I'll give you my thoughts on and show some sample images and what I think and where they work and where they don't work. All right. Okay, so we're back. So first image. Okay, this was taken from a wedding earlier this year before New South Wales went into lockdown. So here, this is an example of just inside a house, and we've got some windows over here. So what we can see over here is the the kind of bloom that happens with the highlights. So that's what this filter essentially does. It makes those highlights and it kind of spills them out from where they're contained, and it just kind of like spills them out. And I think it's just kind of rather charming and rather nice. It gives a little bit of a magical quality rather than just kind of like something that looks like a bit like a mistake. Like you have to in photography, you have to make a decision, right? You have to like, do I blow the highlights or do I expose for them and lift the shadows up? Until we get to a place where we're going to have, what is it, 22 stops of dynamic range, what the human eye can see or something like that, you have to make these decisions, and that's what HDR is, isn't it? It's about trying to do lots of shots, to try and cover that dynamic range. And I think we're getting there with things like computational photography with phones, but we're just not there yet with our proper cameras. So I think that's where I find this filter really good. If you do make a decision to say stuff it, to the highlights, I'm blowing you, then it tends to look a little nicer, especially for something like a wedding. I think where weddings are all about positivity and happiness and kind of almost fantasy and dreamy. I think a Pro Mist works really well in that kind of context. So that's just one example there. I mean, also obviously, these skin tones are quite bright here, but as I demonstrated before when I took the filter off this camera, it does soften the skin. I almost feel like I'm post-processing a lot less because I have this on. It's already getting me to the look that I want as a good starting point. I'm messing around with less sliders. Not that I think you can actually replicate it very well with sliders. I'm just talking about that general kind of, softening up the skin is kind of done it for me. So next image, again, this is sort of a ceremony, and I'm just really enjoying what's happening with the celebrant's, white bright jacket here. She's almost looking angelic, quite symbolic of that kind of ceremony. These are really difficult situations to shoot in Australia. I mean, this is another one where these two, they're kind of walking away, confetti is being thrown. And this is Australia, right? So we've got down here, I'm already really struggling with dynamic range. It's blue sky day, not a cloud in the sky. We can see I've already pulled the highlights back for the blue sky here. We still even got some dark shadows, black shadows over here. And I'm doing a pretty good job of protecting the highlights in the face, so I'm trying not to blow them. But of course, they're still very bright. So what happens is you get a little bit of a haze and a glow that comes off the really, really bright white things. Where the highlights are, it's going to start to get blown. But in the context like this, I just think it looks fantastic. It looks charming. If you don't have this kind of spill, I think it can just look really technically a bit iffy. So I actually quite like this look, but I'm not sure. It's kind of interesting. I think if you used it maybe in overcast, cloudy European countries, the effect might not be as much. I always feel as though you're going to see how this background here is very dark, and then we've got very bright. So we've got bright to dark, that transition really quick, and I think that's where the bloom works really well. Rather than a hard edge, and that hard edge I think is where you're going to get things like purple fringing and stuff like that from lenses. You're going to get that less with using this filter, which I think is, again, another thing you don't have to worry too much about with post processing. Excuse me, it just kind of helps that work a little bit better. So Australia is very, very difficult conditions to shoot in. Everybody goes, oh, it's a blue sky today, it's wonderful weather, and us photographers are, you know, biting our teeth, and because we can't use flash all the time. So I think that's a good choice. That's maybe when you'd use it. Moving on, again, this is one that's inside a tent, bright, very, very bright outside. I'm just doing some kind of candid speeches and things like that. And we've got this lovely spill of bloom coming out, which I think is quite nice, kind of a little bit cinematic. It's maybe a little bit overkill. It's really interesting that I can never really predict how intense it's going to be. I'm using the 1/4, but I've seen people, you know, have hardly any of a bloom come from a 1/4, and some of they're just like massive. So it's kind of interesting. You don't always know what you're going to get. But that's that one. Same sort of thing again. You know, if I can't possibly expose for these highlights, if I did, I'm going to lift up the shadows, and they're just going to look absolutely awful. And it's a fairly decent camera. I've got full frame Pentax K1 here, and it's the dynamic range is pretty good. But it's still going to struggle with some of these things. So you got to make a call. And I prioritize the people and just go to hell with the highlights. And I think that's what this has been, a real lifesaver for me for event work. I just feel as though it adds that kind of dreamlike, fantasy, happy feeling about it. Again, here we've got some highlights from the back here spilling out onto the guy there. And then, you know, in the ceilings, you're going to start sealing them, the light sources bloom up here. And again, that's just kind of like another one, sort of those kind of happy vibes. Again, another kind of relatively boring, candid kind of behind the scenes shot. Difficult situations because it's very bright here. I can't pull it back any further, but we're getting some nice bloom here. Again, it kind of just looks, I don't know. It's hard to describe the look. I just think it generally looks a little bit better. Again, another one here. So just more kind of candid stuff around as people talking with the guests, and the lights are just starting to bloom here a little bit. Not so much in the little ones, but they are definitely outside. And it just feel like it just makes it more charming. It's just got a much nicer feel about it. Again, same sort of thing. We've got these highlights kind of just spilling out a little bit from here. I think it's just kind of a little bit more cinematic and nice. This one, they caught me off guard quick. They wanted a shot, so I just grabbed this one. But again, you know, quite extreme here, but it's probably better than not. It's quite, but again, you sometimes you can't predict it. Sometimes it could just be too intense, and that's why I have these on a little filter, magnetic filter. I can just take them on and off quite quickly if I think it's gone a bit too crazy. It's not too bad there. And then other charming moments here, and even, yeah, sort of shots like this. It's kind of blooming up at the top there. Again, same again. So that I actually made a bit of a decision, an executive decision to rotate the camera that direction, do portrait rather than landscape, just to kind of capture this bloom and pull it into the scene, rather than just try and cut it off. I involved it into the shot, and that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because quite often we will go, that doesn't look good, it's going to be a nightmare to handle that. I'll actually pull it in. I think it's kind of cool. It adds to the shot a little bit, adds to the happiness, positivity of the day. Another example there. And yeah, and some landscapes. And it just does a pretty good job in there. Skin tones as well for people. I'm having to do a lot less retouch, and it's quite nice in different colors as well. See it blooming down there. So that's just one example. Okay, so here's some blog work. We can already see here, and this shot here, I used it when I did the Glenn Davis shoot recently. I almost used it exclusively throughout that whole shoot, and we can just see it, that highlight there on her arm. I just really kind of bloom there a little bit, and around her hair. It's just got that kind of magical kind of quality to it. So I really like that. So let's have a quick look in here, see what else we've got. So this was I've done a video about this before. I'll leave the link and you can read about it here if you like. But this was the test shot I did the night before. Something I wanted to try, which was reverse key lighting. And so the Pro Mist was on here, and it is just blooming this Godox 8000 big time. That's just a bare flash, no softbox there. It's kind of interesting, but it's kind of producing this nice kind of light from there. And rather than avoid it in my frame, I include it. in my frame. And then these are some of the shots again that I was actually doing around the campfire with my friends. And yeah, you can see it there. It's just kind of blooming out these little lights that were in the tree there. Sorry, I have strange friends. I do apologize. Moving on. But yeah, you get the idea. It's just kind of blooming those kind of highlights. And I actually like it. I thought it was working to my advantage. So this shot here, 100% straight out of camera. Again, it's just blooming that transition between light, highlight, and dawn. This was a dawn. It's foggy shot. Just really like what it's doing. Let me see where else. Sometimes I did pop it off, and just sometimes I didn't. I left it on. More often than not, on this shoot, it was almost always on. Definitely, it was on these ones here. This kind of soft kind of fog. I really liked what it was doing there. I just did a color version to strengthen it. Even just like a boring shot like this, just you know, telegraph pole faint in the background and fog. It's just the way that fog is working. It's just kind of spilling out a little bit. I just really like that atmosphere. Definitely use it for this one. It's one of my favorite images of the year. Is this little sticks and stones, this one here. And we're back to that shot again. This is the color version. You can see it there blooming out. Yeah, you obviously interpret the color version a bit different from the mono. So it'll bloom differently depending on how hardcore you go with that approach as well. I think that, I mean, yeah, you see a little bit blooming through here, around the umbrella. See it. I think it's kind of more noticeable maybe on the mono. But again, I just think it's a quality that adds to the image rather than detracts. But your mileage may vary. You might think it's not so good. It's up to you. It's just preference, really, personal taste, I think. It was kind of working here a little bit and blooming down on the things that were really reflective. Same again down here. So things that are starting to blow a little bit. It's almost like it's a way of salvaging things that are going to blow. If you're going to blow something, blow it nicely. And that's what I feel like the Primus does really well. And even, yeah, just down here in his chair, it's just starting to bloom nicely on that metal there. All right. You can see it down there in the mono. What else I use it? Pink Planet, definitely, when I did this little shoot here. I think half the charm of this front page little shot here is the way that sky is rendering. And often it's those branches with those dark branches going straight to the bright sky. It's a horrible transition, I find, usually. And again, where you might get purple fringing. Here, Primus Filter just saves the day. So that, yeah, this just works wonderful on fog in general. I find this haze is just beautiful. It just kind of spills out a little bit down into the woodland. Again here, and if you've got a bit of sun as well with the fog, it's even better. Kind of works well. So yeah, definitely enjoyed using it there. I'll just to finish off there because I know I'm probably boring you now. This one here, I used all these images are 100% straight out of camera, no editing whatsoever. So when we've got a nice little bloom like this is taken with the Fuji. When we've got a nice little bloom like this, that is the Primus that's responsible for that. This is just dragging a shutter, but again, I'm just kind of liking how it's working with those highlights there. Sometimes it's just not really doing what you feel like it's doing too much. And other times it's just creating magic. I just love this little street shot here with these little sparkles of specular highlights on the vehicles and trees. It just makes it romantic and like I said, I know it's cliche and cheesy to say, but you know, cinematic. I do actually feel like it does give that slight vibe. If you start cropping all of your shots, you know, 2:3 aspect ratio 69, you're going to get a lot more of that kind of vibe going on as well. So yeah, again, all of these were straight out of camera. This is quite interesting because this is like a, you know, that kind of store neon lights in the store. I really like this shot a lot, and it's spilling, but it's not, because it's bright to bright, it doesn't look like it's spilling too much, which I think that's actually quite cool. So it works really differently depending on your light source. Whereas something like here, you can see the bloom much more against the darkness. So you've got, you know, it goes both ways. But yeah, and I think it works quite well here. Kind of, you can see all of this is just kind of, the haze is just spilling out even on this foreground building here. Can't think. Yeah, that's that one. If there's anywhere else really, yeah, I used it all in Clicks and Coffee. If you haven't seen that one, check that video out there. It's quite fun. This was just a foggy morning around my block, just taking the camera, and you can just see how it's reacting with that haze or that fog. I just think it's really terrific. It's just kind of like that pole there that would be black, but the haze is just spilling out a little bit each side, and yeah, I think it's just really really nice. I really like the way it looks. Again, over here, I just enjoy the effect. So really, yeah, I bought a couple of them. So as you can see, I showed you one earlier. I had one. I've got a few for different lenses. I'm probably going to buy another one. The question at the moment is whether I decide to buy another 1/4 to keep my work consistent throughout my lenses, or maybe try something a little bit different, like a milder one at 1/8. I always find like the negs of using one, I just don't feel like that big a deal for a lot of work. For sure, like your studio portrait work, I mean, I do have some somewhere that I've used it. I'll forget about it right now, but I think it can work quite well there. But sometimes those high fashion shoots, they probably don't like them because they like that kind of specular crystal highlights and every pore and nook and cranny being visible on the model's face. If that's the look you want, then definitely don't get this lens. That's not going to help with that at all. But if you're somebody who's shooting more average Joe Blogs sort of people, and you want to save yourself some post-processing, I think it could be really, really helpful. Yeah, for sure. The other one that I'm interested in at the moment is a Glimmer Glass 1, which is supposed to do a very similar effect, but maybe have a little bit more, retains the contrast a little bit more. So I might grab one of them instead. I'm not sure. I'm just a bit worried about when I lens swap and change on event work that things might look a little bit inconsistent. So I might just go for another Pro Mist again. But yeah. Leave me your thoughts and comments below. What you thought of it, what you think of it. Just in terms of trend and stuff like that, I think that's some trend. Is it a trend? I don't know. It is quite big in the Fuji world. I think when people doing the film sims and they're doing the straight out of camera stuff, like I was showing before, it is quite it is used in quite a few of the recipes. It can be useful to get that filmic look even more. I mean, I'm just not really. I don't really care about trends, if it's a trend or not. I mean, it's like people say like, oh, HDR is a fad or a trend or selective coloring. No, I mean they're fine. If it's just if you do it good. I mean, there's just the problem with HDR is just there's so much shit out there. Most of it is awful. So HDR gets a bad rap. Selective color is used very poorly and makes the photo doesn't contribute anything to the photo and makes it worse. But if you go and watch Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List, there's some selective coloring in that, and it still holds up in 2020. No, so I don't really think that's just photography. There's times to use it and times to not use it, and that's all there is to it, really. It's just it's just another aid. This argument of oh, you can do it in Photoshop, that's shit. Honestly, even if you could, you wouldn't. You're not going to look at photo after photo and go, oh yeah, that would really look good if I give it a Pro Mist, effect. Nobody does that. And if it was something that required you to go into Photoshop, then you're not going to be able to use it for event work because you're not going to be able to synchronize your work across a bunch of files easily. So it's just way too much work. The idea of spending $100 on a filter is to make you work less, not work harder. It's like I've heard the argument before. Lensbaby, I've got a couple of Lensbaby lenses, and I've sold a few. In fact, I've sold the Velvet 85 because I felt as though I was getting a nice effect from the Pro Mist. It made that lens a little bit redundant, to be honest. I've still got some other Lensbaby lenses that I think are good, and I would use them prudently. But this idea, oh, you could do a Lensbaby effect in Photoshop. Well, can you? I mean, maybe Photoshop can, but can you? I mean, it's like Photoshop's not the easiest program to use in the world and takes a high level of skill to be able to really pull off a Lensbaby look in Photoshop. That's, well, kudos to you if you can do it. You've saved yourself, $400, $500 on buying the lens. But when are you going to know when it's going to work or when it's going to be useful or not? So no, I don't get into all that kind of, oh, just because you can do it in Photoshop doesn't mean that lens or filter or whatever is useful. It has no use. I don't buy into that argument at all. I think it's just ridiculous. So I don't really believe in fads and trends so much. I just believe that what happens is there's a technique that comes out and it does get a lot of people use it, and a lot of people using it not very well, and it can get a bad rap that way. You're saturated with it used poorly. Maybe I'm to blame. Maybe some of these are shit. So, versus seeing it used with wisdom and control, and I just feel that way about all sorts of things. Like I say, HDR or anything else. There's no problem with it. I mean, when I do some of my serious landscape work, I'll do HDR. I'll bracket the shot. I might not let a program merge it all for me. I might kind of tastefully do it myself. But it's a high dynamic range shot nonetheless. Couldn't do it in one frame. So yeah. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and you got something from it. I think they're a valuable tool. I think maybe old glass could do it. Perhaps there's certain lenses that give off that kind of feeling, but of vintage lenses. But the beauty of this is you can slap it on any modern lens with autofocus and get the work done, and get it without having to use an old manual focus lens. I think that I think as things have progressed, we first of all we got away from film and manual focus to go on digital, on autofocus, and it's only sort of now that we're getting companies that are kind of innovating and coming up with filters. And maybe I'm sure I'm ignorant here, but maybe these things have been around for ages and they've been used in the film industry for like eons upon eons, and now they're only just sort of making it into for photographers, for still photography. So, but they're here now. Why not use them? If you like the effect and what it does, grab it or not. It's up to you. All right, so yeah, hope you like this video, and I'll stop talking now, and yeah, let me know your thoughts and comments below. Cheers.